All right. So today we are going to be talking about Bleeding Kansas and John Brown, who is also the craziest person we are ever going to talk about. This dude is a nut job and it's fantastic. So before we start, we need to talk about the addition of two states. We've gone over the United States adding a lot of states during its westward expansion period. They added Missouri, they added Texas, they added a whole bunch of land they got from the Mexican-American War, California, Oregon, and once again, we're going to keep adding, but here's the big problem. Every time the United States during this 40-year stretch has to add states, they always have to add them in pairs. They have to have a balance between free states and slave states. The reason for this is because in the Senate, each state gets 2 senators. They each get 2 votes for however many states there are. So there's going to be a problem if we have more free states than slave states, because then there's going to be the free states would have a lot more power in the Senate because there's more of them. Similarly, we can't have more slave states than free states for the same problem. So during this 50-year stretch, there always has to be an equal amount of free states and slave states. So whenever they wanted to add a state to the Union, they always had to think, okay, well, we can't if we add Missouri as a slave state, we also have to add Maine as a free state. If we want to add Texas as a slave state, we got to add Wisconsin as a free state. There's always this tick for tack kind of thing until about 1850 when California gets involved. But that's later. So yeah, you do not want a power imbalance between free states and slave states. That's the entire thing that they're trying to avoid during this time, is some kind of power imbalance in the Senate. So if we need to add Kansas-Nebraska, who's going to be a slave state and who's going to be a free state? How are we going to do this? Well, let's have them pick, right? It's a democracy. Let's have them vote on if they want to be a free state or a slave state. And they passed this Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. This is about 6 years away from the Civil War. So we already know this isn't going to work out. So they call this, and this term's actually going to pop up a lot as you go through social science courses. So I want you to write this down. They call this popular sovereignty. And all it is a fancy way of saying, let people vote and decide for themselves. And I won't move that again so you can see it. So popular, like it's, it wins the majority, it's the popular decision. And then sovereignty is like your ability to have power of yourself. So as an adult, you have sovereignty over your life. Like I can go to the beach without doing my work, and I can eat 3 gallons of ice cream if I want because I'm an adult and I have the sovereignty over my own life to do that. You are a child, you don't. So sovereignty is the ability to decide for yourself. So popular sovereignty, let states decide for themselves. All right, so this is going to flawlessly work out, right? Well, power to the people. It's going to flawlessly work out. It does not, spoiler alert, this does not flawlessly work out. That could happen. So this time period gets called Bleeding Kansas. So this doesn't end up good. So here's what ends up happening. Because Congress says, all right, Kansas and Nebraska get to decide for themselves. They get to vote. The people that live there get to vote. You start to see a lot of people that live in the surrounding states purposely move to Kansas. I know you're thinking, why does anyone want to live in Kansas? It's a trash state. I agree with you. No, I'm kidding. Well, no, I agree with you. But sorry if you're from Kansas, that you are from such a terrible state. But what happens is that people in the surrounding states that are very passionate about slavery or are very passionate about abolitionism moved to Kansas on purpose in order to vote whether to make Kansas a slave state or a free state. And what happens is these two sides, your pro-slavery people and your abolitionists, they start to fight a lot. They start to taunt each other. They start to get violent. They start to beat each other up, kill each other, burn each other's towns down, put raids on each other's towns. And this really starts to become a bloody conflict between what they called free staters, which were abolitionists, people that wanted it to be a free state, and what became known as border ruffians. Border ruffians, right here, were pro-slavery people from Missouri that just went across the state border to Kansas to start trouble, to fight free staters, to fight abolitionists. So you had these two groups moving from surrounding states, from even across the country to Kansas in order to vote, and they start beating the crap out of each other. This cartoon, you can see it, the controls are saying right here, but a lot of political cartoons were made during this time to show what was going on. So if that's not enough, there's even more violence. This is in Congress, though. This is in the in Congress. Yeah, it's in Congress. You have this dude, Charles Sumner, and he is an abolitionist senator from Massachusetts. So he's Northerner. He's very against slavery. And he gives this speech calling pro-slavery people and just Southerners in general, starts calling them like abominable human beings, a waste of God's gifts. He calls them like heathens, uneducated, cavemen. He gives like this fiery speech saying that they're all terrible people with like no morals, and they're super awful, and they like barely, and like they're stupid and idiots. They're like inbred and all this terrible stuff, like really bad. So a couple days later, there's this dude, Preston Brooks. I'll give you a hint about what's about to happen. He's the guy with the cane, and this dude is the guy with the pen. So you can see this is not going to turn out well. So this South Carolina congressman with the cane takes offense to this, goes up to him 2 days later and says, "Hi, are you Mr. Sumner?" And he says, "Yes, I am." He says, "You said some bad things about my family and about South Carolina." He goes, "Yes, I did." And then he beats the crap out of him with a cane. Like, he beats him until he's unconscious, and then he continues to beat him with a cane until the cane breaks. A metal cane. You know how hard it is to break a metal cane? So he's beating him for like a minute and a half. And there are other people on the floor of like, imagine turning on C-SPAN and just seeing one dude beat the crap out of that person with a cane. And then there are other Southern congressmen that are in the area, so from other states in the South, and they are also there. There are people who are trying to stop him. They're trying to stop this person from killing Sumner with a cane. And then there are other Southern congressmen who intervene and like try to keep them out so he can keep beating him with a cane. It's like when there's a fight that breaks out at school, and then all the other kids form a little ring around it so teachers can't get through to the middle of the fight to break it up. Like, they're doing that. They're basically letting him beat the crap out of him with a cane. So clearly, like, this is a terrible thing. Violence is awful. When Preston Brooks gets back to, gets arrested and tried and jailed, right? No, he does get arrested. He gets put on bail. He never actually gets convicted. So he gets arrested, and then he goes back home. And South Carolina threw a parade for him. They threw a parade for this dude beating the crap out of a northern senator with a cane. And then because his cane broke, people were gifting him more canes and like giving him canes through the mail. And some of them even said like, "Hit him again" on the cane. So like, they were clearly in support of this kind of violence against Northerners. Northerners and Southerners really didn't like each other. There's actually, if you want to learn more about it, there is a video that goes by Mr. Beat, and he goes all about how this actually happened. If this is your semester event, you should definitely watch it, because it's just crazy. It reads like a schoolyard fight. It's just absolutely insane. I'm gonna move on because there's even more craziness in the form of John, God wants me to kill all of you Brown. So this dude, John Brown, He is an extreme abolitionist. Very, 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 very anti-slavery, and he will do anything necessary to stop it, including killing slavers in mass and anyone that supports slavery. So this dude, right, he goes to Kansas with his family. He has like 10 sons and supporters in abolitionist towns along the way that he stops at. And what he does is him and his abolitionist family and friends go throughout pro-slavery towns in Kansas and murder a lot of people. That's it. That's what they do. They murder pro-slavery people, which I guess is kind of like the plot of Django Unchained. But one of these gets called the Potawatomi Massacre because Native American names make things a little more complicated. So he gets like massacres named after him. So he's a pretty legit dude, but he's not done. He's not done just murdering people in Kansas. His last stop is at Harper's Ferry. This is a town in Virginia. And what happens is he decides, I'm going to, with my family and friends, we are going to raid Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry was an armory. So the plan was they would raid this armory in Virginia. They would get all the guns from Harper's Ferry, and they would give them to slaves in the surrounding area. And the slaves would start a slave rebellion, and then they would kill slave owners. That was the plan. And it was supposed to be this miraculous, God sent me to do this. God wants me to do this. He'll protect us. God doesn't protect them. What actually happens is there's this train that's passing through Harper's Ferry and sees this happening. And John Brown's men stop it. And then they say, okay, you can keep going to Baltimore. The train gets to Baltimore. They say, hey, Harper's Ferry is being taken over by terrorists. National Marines get sent out and they surround John Brown's family. Long story short, John Brown and his entire troop is captured, arrested, and then they are later executed. I'm going to show you this video. Okay. Keep going. So, John Brown kills a lot of people. And you could say they're innocent, but he kills a lot of slavers, pro-slavery people. He also does kill like people in Harper's Ferry, just the town, because it's part of the operation. So the big question is, John Brown very purely fought against slavery. That was his motivation for all of this. So is he a hero, or is he America's first terrorist? So that's going to be your job. You're going to see a couple documents, and you are going to have to say, do you think he should be treated as a hero or a terrorist? Is John Brown good or bad, or both, or neither even? And then from whose perspective? Even from Northerners. Would Northerners think of him as a hero or a terrorist? We know most Southerners would probably think of him as a terrorist. What about Southerners that were anti-slavery? Would they think of him as a terrorist as well? And how should we remember him today? Should he be remembered positively, negatively, just as a crazy psychopath, or as someone who knew exactly what he was doing? That is going to be your task. So in your practice, you're going to get a couple newspaper articles from the time. One's going to be from the north, one's going to be from the south. And you are going to decide what you think, how he should be remembered. And you're going to have to use evidence. This is one of those things that I think is really interesting. So hopefully learn something and have a great rest of your day.